Do you think that the slow growth was a benefit, or you're just like, nah, I wish I hit the 100K in like a weekend? Like, how do you look back on that?
I think it's better that I've kind of just grown gradually. I've had my ups and downs definitely, and like I said, I hope we do dive into that a little bit more later. But you know, I find that a lot of people that just really explode, like especially if it's just for one thing, um, they'll have their 15 minutes of fame, quote unquote, and then they kind of just, if they're not creative enough to keep it going, or if it was just a quick little funny thing, you don't really hear about them anymore. They kind of just either give up and we're like, oh, that was it, whatever. Stuff kind of dies down and they maybe get demotivated. They don't have that that instant push, because once you're up there, and then even if stuff kind of like views and stuff dissipate a little bit, it kind of gets a little discouraging. So I think the more drastic that happens, it's that could mess with you more as a creator.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to My Social Life. This is the podcast where we teach you how to grow on social media by talking to the people that have actually done it. I'm your host, Jacob Kelly. As always, today's podcast is powered by TRUFAN. Before we get into today's conversation with Arcade Matt, there's a couple things that we need to go over first. If you enjoyed today's podcast, be sure to leave us a positive rating and review, share this episode with a friend, and subscribe to the show. Put up brand new interviews every single Tuesday, and a brand new takeaways episodes and audio exclusive where I sit down and break down the most recent podcast episode of the week every single Thursday. And now, one other thing that we unfortunately have to go over before we get into today's conversation with Arcade Matt is that I messed up. I'm recording on a different computer than I normally do because my laptop died and my default microphone is not my Blue Yeti. And I did check my settings when I jumped into the podcast, and it recorded the entire interview on my headphones. Now, it doesn't sound awful, but if you've been here for a while, it's not going to sound like it normally does. If you're new here, it doesn't sound like this every week. But my conversation with Matt was really, really good, and I really wanted to put this episode out. And Matt talks more than I do, and his mic sounds great. So that's what counts. But we'll learn from this. 168 episodes in, we're still making mistakes. We're still learning. Checking the settings, probably something I should be doing every time. But I didn't this time, and I regret it. But we keep moving on. We move forward. Like I said, the conversation with Matt's awesome. The headphones, they don't sound like the Yeti, but they don't sound awful. But I just want to give you that heads up. Like I said, Matt still sounds great. And I'm really excited for you to listen to this. Let's get into my conversation with Arcade Matt. And to call Arcade Matt an OG YouTuber would be an understatement. His first upload came on January 4th, 2006, which is less than a year after YouTube released. Since then, he has grown to 1.7 million subscribers on YouTube, 1.9 million followers on TikTok, 800,000 followers on Facebook, 55,000 on Instagram. He was originally known as Matt3756. Today, he's known as Arcade Matt, and I could not be more excited to have him here on the podcast today. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jacob. I'm super excited for this opportunity. I'm really glad to be here.
I'm excited to have you here, man. And where I want to start is normally what I ask my guests is who were you before you started creating? But from my understanding, Matt before and after starting creating was a very similar person, because you've always been kind of like a carnival and arcade game enthusiast, if I'm not mistaken. Like, I think you were 16. It was your first job at CVS. You were putting paychecks in a pretzel jar in order to buy your own claw machine, right?
Dude, you have done your research. Like you've nailed it, man. Yeah, it's spot on. I've always been interested in arcade games and stuff even before that. I remember being a little kid and just, there was this old place called Callahan, and it was like it was almost like a Dave and Buster's main event kind of place. They had food and games, but we're talking old school games, like put quarters in, token action games, a lot of skill games. And it was in a little shopping center, maybe 15 minutes from where I used to live. And I remember going there and playing these games, like the big haul game where you put the token down, you got to hit the dump lever to dump the truck of coins. And I remember, learning like a timing to this game. And I'm like, you know what? If I put the coin in at this certain time, depending on where this thing is at, then, I have a better chance of hitting the jackpot. And, I'm like 8, 9 years old, 10 years old, like figuring this out. Now, I'm winning all these tickets, and I'm like, I never thought it would turn into anything. But yeah, I mean, personality wise, though, I'd say I was totally different than what I am now. I was super shy as a kid, and I mean, we're talking night and day. This is like the last thing I thought I'd be doing with in my life, like having all these people and making content for them. When I signed up in January 4th, 2006, I just wanted like a site. I was doing like, and they're still up to these older videos. I was doing like home shopping network skits and stuff,
Gadget of the day.
and yeah, yeah, and like I don't know. I always loved like just being on camera and editing and putting something together, and I just wanted a place to upload it. I didn't really care if anyone watched it. If I had, like, 5 or 10 people, if I got 5 or 10 views, I'd have been happy. It was a weird time where there was, like, Google Video and, there were other sites too that where you could upload videos, but it was still that era of, like, there wasn't really, like, a uniform platform. There wasn't anything like there wasn't really streamlined even as far as, like, the editing process. You're outputting, I think, like, MPEG-2, and now it's just all MP4, and it's super, more a lot more streamlined. But back then, it was just like, how am I what am I uploading? How am I gonna get the best quality? So that's kinda where I was at during that time.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you might have had a bit of an advantage at that point because you went to school for video production, right?
Yeah, so I went to after high school, I went to funny because I was originally gonna go for computer forensics, like I was like a criminal justice major. Strange, I know. I don't know where this like, but I was like at the last minute. I remember there was one night I was just like, I originally, well, long story short, I wanted to go into like acting and stuff like that or film work. So like maybe both, like maybe behind the scenes and in front of cameras. Whatever kind of took off would take off, but I remember just one night sitting, like I was ready. It was like after I graduated high school and stuff, and I was kind of just unsure. I'm like, something just like it was like this thought just popped into my head. And it was very weird. Like, it was like it was like, no, this is what you want to do. This is what you want to really do. And it was like filmmaking, camera work and acting and stuff like that. So I kinda changed my major last minute because I was going for, I believe it was, like, computer forensics or something. I'm stupid. I think it might have been cool nowadays, especially with how computers are now. It probably would have been a good major, but, um, it I kinda just changed my major last minute. I'm like, I wonder if they have anything that's, like, video related, and my, community college did have something, so that's where I started there, and then after community college, I think I maybe took 1 or 2 years off, and then I went for a bachelor's for pretty much media arts, TV, video.
I mean, I think it makes sense, really, if you look back on it, that that's what you ended up picking to go to school for. Because, like, I remember, I think it was your dad had the giant camcorder. The first time you saw yourself on TV and was plugged in
Yeah.
was like a moment for you, where like was it record your brother, your half brother Josh, I believe, like used to record you
Yeah.
playing video games and stuff. Like you're always around cameras and stuff growing up. I think it makes sense that that's ultimately what you went to school for. But I'm curious, since you said you went to your community college, you did your bachelor's. What then led to you deciding to focus on YouTube? Because I feel like those are two very different things, especially at that point in time, where it's like you have the traditional route and then you have this new digital route that you decided to kind of opt for. How come you chose that? Because I feel like if you went through all the work to go kind of like you were on the traditional path and then you just kind of took a hard right and went digital, like what led to that?
Yeah, so YouTube, I started out just as, like, a hobby kinda thing ever since even through my, going to my, bachelor's degree, it was really still a hobby then. It was just hit or miss if you go back, like, it was kinda just, like, random videos, just kinda seeing what stuck. Um, the one of the first arcade ones was, like, I believe, like, me at Ocean City, Maryland, just on the boardwalk. It was, like, a 2-minute video just trying to win, like, a Nintendo DS or whatever it was back then, and, just a real quick clip, like, potato quality, and, it it was just kinda I didn't really have, like, a theme to the channel, hence the Matt3756 name. Like, I had no plans for it to, like, just be arcade stuff. It was just, like, kinda like I said, just a hobby. Um, and I would go with friends to, like, Dave& and Buster's, especially during, my going for my bachelor's degree in college, and, we would go on, like, Wednesdays and stuff because it's half price day, and we go and film, and it was fun because, like, they were fun. We were just like it was just, like, fun. I'm like, "This is gold," like, just the way that we're, playing these games and making it fun, and even trying to like win these little pointless cheap prizes out of the claw machine, and we just made it fun. And I'm like, this is, so I kind of just was like, well, that was actually after. So like before that, let me backtrack a little bit. So I did buy my first claw machine around the age 16, 17. It was a full size claw machine. Yeah, I saved money from my first job at CVS Pharmacy. I was a cashier making $5.25 an hour. And I just stayed. I was like, I want to buy one of these machines for my house. And so I eventually got one, found a guy on, I believe it was eBay, that had one for like 500 ish. And a few years after I got it, I made a tips and tricks video on like how they work, and how they can set the strength, and some tips and tricks on how to win at them, because these older machines are 100% skill, because once the operator sets the strength, that's it. It grabs the same every time. Now, yeah, there's newer machines, and there's a lot of them out there today where they can adjust the voltage on the fly without the operator being there. And after so much money is accumulated, then it grabs, full strength, or they can have it set to random. And there's all these different settings, but there's still some machines out there, and the ones that were prominent, even when I made that first video, were all skill based. So I'm like, yeah, let me just put this up, see what happens. So it didn't go crazy viral. It was getting like some views here and there, but people were saying like, hey, I use your tips and tricks and I was able to win this and that. I'm like, oh, that's cool. So then I had the idea of, well, why don't I go out to like actual arcades and places like Dave and Buster's, or like my local mall arcade and whatever, and show like my tips and tricks live at the arcade, to show, hey, listen, I'm not making this crap up. You can't win every time, but my tips and tricks will definitely help you to at least point you in the right direction. So that's, I guess, kind of where that funneled into. And then just I was intermixing more arcade stuff in with my other random YouTube content.
I think there's a lesson in that for creators, and the fact that like what ultimately ended up working for you in terms of content. You said you're kind of throwing different things up there, seeing what sticks, but like ultimately it was like, what is the most authentic thing to you? And that came back to the arcade games, and that's what ultimately ended up working. And I think that that's something that people should realize, because I think a lot of, especially aspiring creators, they want to like, they just look to see what other people are doing and try and do that. But really, it's like, it's what do you want to talk about? Because it's going to be your niche. You're going to be stuck talking with this for a while. So make sure it's something you like talking about. And for you, it happened to be arcades, and it worked out. And so you said that that tips for the claw machine was doing pretty well, like views here and there. But do you remember the first video of yours that really kind of like took off?
You know what? I'd have to go back. It's been so long. I don't know. There were, honestly, like, and I hope we do talk more about this, because I feel like I have a very unique story as far as like the whole YouTube thing, and it's not what a lot of people just generalize with YouTubers. I feel like my story is a little bit different, as far as I never really had like a video that was just like boom, like super viral. We're talking like millions and millions of views. Now, when I was, the ratio now is so much different. So like back then, and even in 2006 to maybe like even 2009, 100,000 views was like several million today. And same with subscribers. Like if you had 100,000 subscribers, that's almost like having 10 million today. A million today is like the new 100,000. You know what I mean? If like the ratios are a lot different. And so I honestly, like, it was just maybe a combination of the tips and tricks videos that kind of just started, getting some traction. I know a few, and even now, like, they're pushing a lot of my really, really old videos. Like, why? Push my newer stuff, please. You know? So it's strange, but like I can't really pinpoint. I've had some ones down the road once I was full time. I know, my most viewed one, I think, on YouTube still to this day, is when I got locked inside the big claw machine at the Zone 28 arcade. And that one went like, that was crazy. That was like a lot of views pretty quick, within like a year or two. But I've never really had nothing that was like boom, a million views in a day. I think I was on trending one time of my whole career, if you want to call it, on YouTube, and it was one of the first times I believe I branched out to carnival games, and I won a ring toss, and so that was kind of new. Now you get, you have other creators doing carnival games and stuff too, but that was kind of one of those things, and I was like, holy crap, that was exciting. But as far as the arcade stuff, I think it was just a combination of the tips and tricks videos, and then I started the Journey to the Claw Machine series, where I'd go out and different places and show the claw machine tricks like out in the actual arcade, and that's kind of what slowly grew it.
Do you think the slow growth benefited you in a sense, as opposed to like if you just exploded all of a sudden, like you woke up one day with like 100,000 subscribers? Like I know it's a little bit of a different situation, but I look at like a Charlie D'Amelio who went from like regular person to 100 million followers in such a short time period. It's like, how do you figure out what to make and who you are and like all this stuff after you hit this growth so quickly? So do you think that the slow growth was a benefit, or you're just like, nah, I wish I hit the 100K in like a weekend? Like, how do you look back on that?
Oh man, well, I swear, like every day I would say the latter. Like, oh, I wish I would have just and I always be, oh, the cat's gonna bug me. I wish there's days that I'm like, oh, I wish I would just have, because I do the comparison game all the time, and I know I shouldn't do this as a creator, and it like gets to you. You're always looking at someone else thinking, wow, they grew so much quicker than me, or they get so many more views than me, and it will drive you insane if you keep doing that. But looking back, I think it's better that I've kind of just grown gradually. I've had my ups and downs definitely, and like I said, I hope we do dive into that a little bit more later. But I find that a lot of people that just really explode, like especially if it's just for one thing, um, they'll have their 15 minutes of fame, quote unquote, and then they kind of just, if they're not creative enough to keep it going, or if it was just a quick little funny thing, you don't really hear about them anymore. They kind of just either give up and we're like, oh, that was it, whatever. Stuff kind of dies down and they maybe get demotivated. They don't have that that instant push, because once you're up there, and then even if stuff kind of like views and stuff dissipate a little bit, it kind of gets a little discouraging. So I think the more drastic that happens, it's that can mess with you more as a creator.
And I'm curious, when did the comparison game start for you? Because like in the beginning, it was just for fun, right? So like, at what point did you start to realize, oh, there's other people and they're growing quicker than me? Like, when did that start?
It was a long time. Like I want to say back when, oh God, I don't even remember the guy's name, but well, Fred, of course, the OG Fred. Like I'm like, oh my god, he has 100,000 subscribers. I'm never gonna hit that, and there was this other guy, I forget his name, but I saw him with 100,000. I'm like, God, there's no way I'm gonna, that. And I, I've always done that, and I know I shouldn't, and no creator really should, but unfortunately, it's human nature, because we're all on this platform, we're all trying to grow and stuff like that. But yeah, I remember even looking back and being like, "Oh, I don't." And this was like, decades ago.
But you mentioned how like there's a lot of those creators who got known for one thing and just aren't around anymore. I feel like Fred is kind of one of them. You know what I mean? Like he blew up like doing his like kind of comedic videos. And one thing I noticed kind of going through your videos is like, yes, you've had that slow growth, but you're still here. You're still creating. And there's so many like people that were creating back then that aren't anymore. And I was also looking at like you talked about how like you've had your ups and your downs. I was looking at the views and it's like your views have been really consistent. You know what I mean? Like you'll have like you'll have something like pop up for like hundreds of thousands, but then you also have a 30,000 view video and it kind of does that, but it's always done that. And I find like when you go to like when I'm talking to other people who've been on the platform for a long time, it's like their trajectory was kind of like up and then like they've just been slowly on the decline for the last several years, but you've been consistent. It's like, what's your secret to being able to do that?
That's a good point you raised, because I brought this up with somebody else about people even with more subscribers than me that have been on as long as I have. And my theory is, the algorithm maybe doesn't push channels that are very, very old. Like I signed up in '06. If you go onto my profile, it says when you joined, And I've seen this on other gaming channels. Like there's a guy that I've seen with like 5 million subscribers, and he does gaming stuff. And, just 2 years ago, he's pulling in half a million views, no problem. Now he's, pulling in maybe 15,000 views in a day. Like, that's, I don't know if it's necessarily his fault. There is other stuff at play, and a lot of people don't like to talk about the A word, which is the algorithm. But I'm a firm believer in it. Some people don't even think it exists. I've been on long enough to where, you just got to kind of going back to your question though, I'd have to say just trying to find like some new things, but still keep the how you started. So like, you know, I did that Journey to the Claw Machine series for so long, and it was so successful for so many years. And looking back, it probably could have been more successful had I um focused more on like the SEO part, which is like search engine optimization and like titles and stuff like that. Because I would just title my videos, and they're still titled that way, like Journey to the Claw Machine. And I would make it some weird little, almost like how networks do, like when you see like an episode of like a cartoon or something and it's up on Hulu. The title of the episode, is kind of just whatever. And I was kind of doing that. I wasn't focusing more on like the, if you want to say like clickbaity titles and thumbnails and like OMG I won, whatever. And um so maybe that's why nothing ever really like exploded. um but maybe that's why it was more of like a consistent thing. And I think also one of my other things was just trying to find like, okay, yeah, I got the claw machine series. Okay, what else can I play? Then I branched out to ticket games. So I'm like, okay, that's a whole nother area I can get into, and we can go for prizes and stuff like that. And then once I branched out to carnival games, I'm like, wow, people really love these, So unfortunately, where I live, they're only open during the summer. So, but that was nice. But it still kind of ties in with the whole, arcade, like amusement industry kind of thing. And then I tried experimenting with mini golf, and when that took off, and I'm like, wow, okay, And sometimes things will take off and they'll stay steady. Other times they'll take off and then they'll kind of just start peaking down. So you just got to kind of think of like some other things to do, I think, but still stay true to like how where you came from.
So how do you determine then when to, kind of two-pronged question here, is like, how do you determine then when it's time to kind of start implementing some new video types, and how do you know when it's time to cut them? Is it just a pure like a views and analytics perspective, or like is it a gut feeling? Like how do you know when to introduce new things and take things away?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's a little bit of both. I'd say for one, and the more important thing would be is if you're getting burned out. If you're getting burned out, you either need to take a break and maybe not do that type of content for a while and maybe focus on something else, or you know, maybe kind of look at your analytics, maybe get some feedback, and if people just aren't maybe clicking on your last couple videos that were maybe a certain topic, then maybe try a little something different. It's kind of just experimenting thing. I think, obviously going on trends too is a big thing to kind of just keep you alive, if you will. I don't really like to do that. I will do trendy stuff because, but I don't like to just use that as like, okay, I'm just going to do trends and that's it, because sometimes there are no trends. Like, look what happened with COVID. We went through a time where there was like nothing. Now we have like the poppets, which have been great for me. I think they're cool toys and they're fun and they're everywhere and there's different ones and they got the food themed ones and they even have them in claw machines now, and that's been successful everywhere on TikTok, even YouTube, and like all the platforms. They've been successful and they're fun. So, but you have to find something that you enjoy. If you're just doing something just to do it, then it just doesn't make sense.
And so then how do you come up with ideas like for your videos? You know what I mean? Do you have like a formal process that you like whiteboard it out, or a journal or something, or is it just kind of like on the fly? Like how do you come up with ideas?
Yeah, so before, like in the beginning, it was just like, okay, we're gonna go out and film and just see what we can win today. And it's funny because a lot of things have changed, because it used to be, especially in the arcade niche at least, you can go out and you can just, play a claw machine for 8 minutes and your video would, do really well. Now, or you could even go and just play ticket games and just not even like get a prize or have some kind of goal or something. You can just go, okay, we're gonna see how many jackpots we can win and blah blah blah. And, do a regular video. And I noticed after a while, I'm like, okay, you know what? These aren't really doing the views that they were. So what can I change? I got to have an element to make them stick around to the end. So that's why I like doing the if a prize at an arcade is like mystery boxes. So that's been a big hit. So I'm like, okay, we can still incorporate, going back to what I said before, we can still incorporate the arcade stuff, but now we're kind of going into another niche of mystery boxes. So we win the prize, but then we unbox it at the end. So they get a little bit of best of both worlds. It's a little fresh, keeps them watching, stuff like that. So, now I noticed, at least again in my niche, you have to have some kind of like goal or theme or something. So I don't really whiteboard anything. Like when my friend and I go to film, it's just like I kind of just go to the arcade, we see what's there, we see what games are there. Okay, how much I'll think, okay, what can I spend? How much do I think I can win this for? Sometimes I'll do videos like, can I win this prize cheaper at the arcade for tickets and stuff like that. So um, it's just a matter of like experimenting and just, finding. I totally lost my train of thought there because this cat
No,
is bugging me. This
you're good.
cat right here. Oh God. Say Goober right here. Goober. Daddy's in an interview. Stop bugging me.
I feel you. I like I've had to start locking my cats out because like this is when they don't want them jumping up on the desk in the middle of an interview, and I'm just
Yeah.
getting rid of cats. So I
You can
feel
leave
you
that
on
in. That
that.
was funny. I don't care.
Yeah, and no worries. What was I gonna say? So you said that like so a lot of it now is like just showing up to the arcade and figuring out kind of figuring out not on the fly, but like being like calculated with what you're gonna do with that video. Have you ever had a day where it's just like it just does not go to plan and like you can't use that footage for a video, or do you put out a video like that where it's like it didn't go to plan, but I'm still gonna release this?
Yeah, I have them, especially with arcade stuff. I'll go and like I was at Cedar Point actually just this past summer. I was just there by myself, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna see if I can win this or whatever for $50 or something. And I was just not hitting anything. Like some of the games were malfunctioning, and I'm like, nothing was just working out. So I literally junked that whole video. I'm like, I'm not even gonna attempt this. Then I tried something else. It was ended up being a really successful video. Was I'm gonna just play this Pop It Claw Machine, and some other ones, and then that one ended up doing well. So yeah, I mean, with the arcade stuff, it's tough because like I don't go to these places and I'm like, all right, guys, I'm gonna pay you, $100. I want you guys to rig these claw machines, make them easier, rig all these games. Like I don't do that. That would be pointless. It's stupid. I go and whatever happens, happens. Now if we do stage something or set something up, I obviously say, hey, the arcade was nice enough to let us do this because I've had videos where like we put an Xbox in a candy crate, but I did it for a reason. I did it because it was part of like a tips and tricks thing, like a very like funny example of one of my tips and tricks. If you got to check the size of the prize compared to the size of the claw, and it was this little dinky claw with a big Xbox in it, So obviously stuff like that was set up, but when we go, it's just whatever happens, happens. Like sometimes, we win a lot. Sometimes we don't really win much. Like the Cedar Point video that I just did with my friend. Like 2 years ago, we killed this one game where we were just, you shoot this little wiffle ball and you got to knock the cups off the thing. I mean, we maxed out 2 years ago. Like they're like, you can't win anymore. And then this year, we didn't win that game at all. But I'm like, you know what? We're still gonna put the video out. I think I won the guess your weight game. So sometimes I'll put them out, but other times if I'm just like, this ain't gonna work, I won't do it.
It's like how much footage do you normally have for one video? Is it like a 4, 5, 6 hours? Like how much when you get into editing that video, how much stuff is there for you to kind of cut down?
So I'd say probably the average video maybe takes an hour and a half, 2 hours to film, depending on the video length. Now, and depending on how much money I spend in the video, if it's Dave and Buster's on a half day, and depending on what games you play too, faster paced games. Like, but I'd say the length it takes to edit. Well, I actually hired an editor now, but I'd say an average of maybe 5 to 6 hours just to edit a video. Get it down to around depending on the length. Um, but shoots is. But if you're looking at like carnival videos, for example, I'll try. I don't just go out and just do one video. So I get maybe 3, 4 in a day if I can. Especially if I travel further, I try to at least get 3. But even like carnival videos, I'll do multiple videos that same day. So we're just not driving all that way, just for one video. So the shoot itself is literally all day. It's not necessarily just for one video, that's multiple videos, but if you figure by the time you drive out to there, or even arcades too, it's usually an all day shoot, even for my local arcades. We're usually there all afternoon, early evening, stuff like that. So it's a process.
And then how do you schedule out those videos? Like if you go to like one arcade and you do 3, 4 videos there, do you put all of those videos out back to back to back, or do you space them out so it looks like they were shot on different days?
Yeah, so I will space them out usually. unless something's like time sensitive. So as far as like a trend or something, and I want to get it out sooner than later. But yeah, most of the time I jump around. I try to keep it fresh. I don't try to just upload. Oh, today we're just gonna upload all carnival videos. I try to really mix it. And I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but they say you're supposed to, once you find something that works, keep doing that. But I just feel like that kind of just would get boring. So I'll try to keep it fresh. Like maybe we'll do a claw machine video, and then we'll do an arcade video. Like just yesterday, I put out a carnival video from the summer. Like I have so much backlog, it's crazy. So I can I have a little bit more freedom to kind of intermix like different videos and try to keep it fresh.
And you mentioned you have an editor there too. Was that a hard call for you to make to start handing off part of that process to someone else?
Yes, and I'm so glad you asked this because this is such a good question. This is probably this year I've learned one thing, and to any creator out there that is thinking of doing this, whether it's a hobby, full time, or even any, this doesn't apply to just YouTube and making videos. I learned this year that don't try and cheap out just to save a few dollars or a few whatever. Like I was getting so stressed because I'm editing for Facebook. I'm editing it a YouTube. I'm editing the YouTube video down to Facebook to 3 to 7 minutes. Then I'm editing that down to a 30-second TikTok, and then sometimes even more for a 10-second Instagram reel. And I'm like, because I'm really focusing on shorts now too. So it was just getting to be so much that I was just getting so overwhelmed. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. So it was tough because I'm like, how am I going to trust someone that knows, my footage and whatever? And oh my God. And I've tried a few people and I didn't have real good luck with them, but I was like, all right, this time we're going to do it right. So what I did was, and this is what someone told me to do, if you're looking for an editor, basically anyone to kind of work with you. Well, as far as editing, what you should do is you have a project, you send, you just, put out, hey, I'm looking for an editor. Whoever applies, you send them that project, and whoever edits the project the way you like it best, then you pick them. Is basically how I was told to do it. So I did that, and I had, I'd say maybe 5, 6 people, different people, and they were mostly pretty good. But this one guy, his name's Sean. Shout out to Sean. He's been amazing. Like, oh my lord. He actually went to the same school I did. I believe the same major too. And his video was insane. It was incredible. It was the challenge that I did with the Fun Foods guy, the TikToker, and we were at Dave and Buster's, and he just like he put so much work into this video, and I was like, wow. And he knew, like, obviously it's a work in progress, and I do revisions and stuff, but he's getting so much better to know like what to keep, what not to keep, and stuff like that. And he's just been amazing. And it's a work in progress, but that video was so insane that I'm like, well, okay, well, if he can do this, then I know he can tone it down and do this. And if I need him to up a little bit, then he's capable of that. So that's kind of what you have to look for when you're looking for someone like an editor. And it was tough at first, like I said, because I'm not, I'm like, am I gonna know what they want, blah blah blah. But now it's like I haven't edited a full YouTube video, and I'd say I don't even remember when I hired him, 3, 4 months ago, 3 months maybe. And it's given me time to do other things, and it's made me a little bit more sane, if you will. So yeah, it's been amazing.
I'm trying to do the math here. How many years then were you editing your own videos for? If you only just hired this editor, you had a couple other before, like was it only in the last like year or so you started?
Oh, that I was editing my own videos? Yeah, it's been since '06 to literally now. Like I'm a one man show. Besides, if anyone were to help me film, that's the only time that I would have like an extra person. And I pay them, of course. Even if it was just a friend, I still give them something. But now I have like I went like the whole LLC route, and then you hire people on payrolls, makes it easier and more streamlined. But yeah, I mean, it was just like editing everything. Thumbnails are still me. Um, so but it's still that at least something has been taken on. Somebody could do the thumbnails would be cool. So, but that's a whole nother area. But yeah, I mean, ever since I started to literally just maybe 3 months ago is just me editing all my videos, and I I don't know how I did it, to be honest with you.
Me neither. That is so crazy that you went for that long. Like, I can't. I mean, you're still doing thumbnails, but hopefully soon you'll get someone else to kind of tackle that for you. But what do you look for in a thumbnail? Like when you're putting one together, like what makes a great thumbnail for you?
Honestly, like looking back, my thumbnails were terrible, like so terrible. And you can go back and see like real, because I didn't focus enough on them. I just, me as a creator, I think creators now can at least learn, hopefully, from some of my mistakes and some of other older YouTubers' mistakes or whatever, if you want to call them that. You got to keep them more simple. Like I know older thumbnails, I would try to jam so much stuff into them, and I'd try to show this and that. And now it's just I know. I remember reading somewhere that or heard somewhere that the max amount of elements you should have in a thumbnail is three. So you kind of keep it like maybe maybe like a game, and then maybe like some other element or like text or something. So I've been I've been really trying to work on my thumbnails and just make them more simple and more vibrant. I'm a big fan of like very vibrant, colorful thumbnails. So I've been working on that and just trying to just make them more simple and not as busy. You gotta because if you look at Mr. Beast, for example, the guy's thumbnails are so simple, like somebody in ninth grade could probably, go and make a thumbnail of his. There's not much to them, but yet they're so effective. So it's just, I think you got to find a balance there.
And I heard this talk to someone who was talking to Mr. Beast recently, and they said he spends up to 10 grand per thumbnail, which is just like
Well, he has the money to
insane.
do it, but
Of
yeah, that's
course.
crazy. It is. It's nuts, and you think, wow, how does I don't have that kind of budget yet, but you have to, and that's one thing I want to, because we're talking about like, hopefully, like some aspiring creators will see this. And one of the things I do want to say is don't feel like you have to, go all out. When you're just starting. Oh, I gotta buy this $1,000 camera and this and that. You could use your phone. Like the phone, I swear, shoots better video than some of my DSLRs. You know, start simple. You don't have to invest really anything. There's free editing software, there's free tutorials, there's free everything. Don't feel like you have to always, oh, I gotta hire a thumbnail maker. No, start making your own thumbnails, or maybe find someone that you can, pay $5. Hey, give me $5, like a friend or something. Don't feel like you have to invest everything just when you're getting started. That will come later on as you grow, and especially with equipment, because I get people all the time that are like, "What kind of camera do I need?" I'm like, "You're on the internet. You can go to Best Buy and get a real cheap little digital camera that shoots video for $50, or $100. Like you don't need anything crazy."
No, not at all. I think you're absolutely right. And then a lot of things too, because what if you were to spend all that money and realize, oh, I don't want to do YouTube, I want to do a blog. And now you've invested all this money in a camera and all this stuff. Like by keeping it minimal in the beginning, it allows you to really kind of experiment and play with it. And if you're going to stick through it with gear that might not be as good as what some YouTubers use, that just shows how much you love it. And you can stair step your way up to getting the good gear. And to your point with the phone too, like I always tell people, it's like you can record a YouTube video, you can record a podcast, you can type out a blog post, like whatever you want to do. Like you have the gear. If you're watching this podcast and this video, if you're on YouTube on a podcast platform, you have enough gear now to start.
Right, yeah, and even especially with how TikTok and everything's taken off right now. We're filming videos literally out of our phone. My phone has been used more than ever than in the past year and a half. It's been used more than I've ever used it for content creation and stuff like that. That is, now that I hired an editor, Shorts is the thing that I'm focused on now, all kind of full time. I'm still doing like, I'm going out and filming like the longer videos and stuff. But then once, my editor edits them, I'll take that and I'll edit it down myself into like a shorter video for TikTok and Instagram Reels. But yeah, it's one of those things that it's just like, it's really taken over and the quality's improved and pretty much everyone has them. So, it's a great way to get started is just using something as simple as your phone and that's it.
I think one thing that's interesting is like a lot of these creators now, like you mentioned earlier, like to learn from the lessons that you and other older YouTubers have made, like because there's so many people that have done it now, like there's kind of like that path. Like you can learn from these people where it's like you and everyone else at that time was kind of just making it up as you went along, and like whatever worked is what ended up working, all right? Like I think that's really interesting is like what are some of the biggest things you've seen change over your time on YouTube? You know what I mean? Like right now, like it's all about those super short videos. A couple years ago, it was like the long 20-minute videos. Like, what are some of those biggest things that have changed over your time?
Yeah, so like I said, I've been through it all. I've been through when they forced the Google Plus integration, that was absolutely horrible. I remember that. And I'm like, "Oh my god, this killed my engagement." I would get like 2, 300 comments in a day, and then I went from that to maybe like 40. I'm like, "What is going on here?" Because they were forcing these people to sign, and they didn't want nobody wants to be forced to sign up and then link their account, and so engagement just dropped. And I'm like, "Oh, this is horrible." Thank God they got rid of it, but, I think it screwed up a lot of things behind the scenes. So that, just the overall, like, obviously the look of the platform, just how, the creator studio kind of thing. I do like how they simplified things and made the metrics a little bit more dumbed down, if you will. I don't necessarily know if they're true because it'll say, "Hey, your video's performing extra well as usual," and it's like, well, I don't see that because it's like the views aren't correlating with that. It has good watch time, but they don't really explain why there's not as many views and just stuff like that. And the whole thing that with the whole subscribe button now, and then they add the bell, and then they add now you got to click something in the bell, and it's like that's really lost. I felt like a lot of my audience throughout the years, and I realize that a lot of people that have watched my videos, from the start are now like in college and stuff, but I still get these people that they're like, "Hey, I've watched you since I was in high school, and I'm in college, and I still love your videos." But I've had people, no joke, that were like, I somehow got unsubscribed to you. And these were like loyal fans. I had this one girl, her name's Allison. She's like super duper. She's a great friend of mine now. And I mean, she was like the most loyal fan you could ever ask for. And she's like, "I keep getting unsubscribed." And I'm like, this is so frustrating, So the bugs throughout the years have been a very crazy battle to deal with and super frustrating at times because it's out of your control. So you just got to kind of adapt, and that's why I have like Instagram and stuff, because I'll push when I put a new video out, I'll put it in my story. I'll take a picture of the thumbnail and I'll put like the link that they can click just to say, "Hey, listen, I put a new video out," just in case some of the notifications and stuff aren't working.
And you mentioned the analytics there and how it's become simpler. And you mentioned watch time as well in there. Is that one of the key metrics you look for? What are some other things like when you jump into your analytics that you're looking at to gauge performance of a video?
Yeah, so me, I probably look at the wrong thing. I look mainly at views. Uh, I know the number one thing that YouTube looks at is watch time, and like click through rate, I think is a big thing too. So if you get a high click through rate, hence why you need good thumbnails. But see, this part makes no sense to me. The whole thing maybe like 4 years ago was like, "Oh, we're trying to get rid of clickbait, and we're trying to make it the clickbait not as prominent." With clickbait, depending on who you ask, has a different definition. To me, it's like a video you click on and you totally don't get what was in there at all. There's a difference between exaggerating it a little bit and pure like fake clickbait. But with this click through rate thing, I'm like, okay, so you're forcing us to make thumbnails that are clickbaity, because let's face it, that's what, if you want someone to click on your thumbnail, you got to make it, interesting or clickbait. That's what news articles do with headlines and stuff every single day. So why are they pushing this click through rate? I thought we were trying to get rid of the clickbait thing. So some of the stuff they implement doesn't really make sense to me. I get the whole watch time thing, because before I think it was just views that really counted, views and like I know like likes and comments from what I hear don't impact much at all. So, you could, because you get these people that are like, "Make sure you guys, if we get 1 million likes, I'm gonna do this," and you get that, but it's like you still don't get, the views. Like they don't, they kind of got smart there, because people were kind of just, but I guess with the watch time, they figured, the longer they stick around, the more engaged they are. But there's all this other stuff too that you know, it'll drive you nuts trying to understand it. And I've been on for 15 plus years. I probably will never understand their whole. I don't even think YouTube understands the whole algorithm. They really don't. Like, it's this beast that's just transformed into like this thing that like you go to ask for help, and why is this doing this? Why is this doing that? You know, I noticed when there was a subscriber issue, it was like the number count or whatever. Uh, people were losing subscribers, but they weren't really losing subscribers. Well, that was definitely impacting views because I noticed it. I'm like, this isn't just a coincidence here. Yeah, it might be a glitch, but it's still impacting my channel and its performance because the algorithm thinks, wow, he's actually losing all these subscribers, so we're not going to push his videos as much anymore. I think there's all this stuff that even the technical team doesn't realize. It's like a domino effect. One thing happens and then it affects all these other things. And people are like, well, what happened? I was doing so well. And then all of a sudden it's just like my views and stuff were cut in half. So that's been probably the biggest struggle. And, I don't know.
I can imagine. And it's like as soon
Yeah.
as you start to think you understand how it's working, they put in a new
hmm
switch and you're just right back to square one again.
hmm
That I can understand where that gets frustrating
And
for
even with
sure.
TikTok too, it's like, their algorithm's a little more not predictable, but it's a little more easier to crack. But I've had friends that like say, yeah, I have this video with like 80, 90% watch time and it barely has hit the For You page. And it's like, that's crazy for TikTok. That's a really good watch time, even 75% on a 30-second plus video. And it's like, sometimes they don't just push. So it's like, why? I don't know. So,
For you, especially like for you having to dealt with this over the last 10 plus years. Um, but kind of jumping back to that, actually, you got partner when it was a big deal. It was 2012, right? I think like you applied for it 2010 and 2011 and then got in
yeah,
2012
the
or
one
something
time
like
I got
that.
denied, the first time I got denied, and then I was like, and then somebody was, couple of the people that were watching my videos like, no, 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 you have to go back and do this and then apply again. I forget what I didn't do the first time or something. And then I was like, forget it. I'll just, wait. Or I maybe even had to wait like another 6 months to apply again. And then I went back. I think it was around the end of 2011 is when I got, early 2012 is when I finally got accepted as a partner. And yeah, that was when, you had to apply, you had to have all your videos. I actually had to remove some videos, unfortunately, because they were just like, yeah, I was afraid of like, copyright material and stuff. So I was like, I gotta get rid of those, like music or like, TV shows or whatever. Um, but not TV shows per se, but like I was on Game Show Network one time when I used to have like a call in thing, and I was like afraid like even that might get flagged, so I had to remove some of those. But yeah, so like that was cool, and then keeping on that topic, I remember when they kind of just opened the floodgates to everybody. They're like, "Oh, anyone can monetize now," and it's like that really killed like just kind of not really killed it, but just like spread it out more. So it was a little bit tougher to get things seen, and earnings were affected there a little bit because now you have a lot of people revenue sharing. When as before, the your CPMS were way different, like your earnings per 1,000 views. So that definitely had an effect there. But then now I think they're back to where you have to have like watch time because that was with the whole Logan Paul thing. They just don't want anyone, with that one viral video revenue sharing if it's not like advertising friendly and all that nonsense. So I guess it's kind of back to where it was where you have to have like watch time and then stuff like that. But it's definitely easier, I think, than it was when I had applied. Like like you don't have to have as much.
Yeah, no, I think it's like 1,000 subs now and 4,000 watch hours or something like that. But then so when you got partner, did you take the jump to full time when you got partner?
Not right away. I was still in finishing up my last year in college for my bachelor's. I just had to take some like core classes, like math or whatever, and I just have just like this one or two extra classes I had to finish to graduate, and it was kind of taken off. Uh, Not like crazy, but I noticed around. I'd say it was weird. It was like like almost right after I graduated. It was kind of like, okay, this is starting to pick up a little bit, and I was like, all right, well, the first month, you get your first $100 from Google AdSense and you're all excited. You're like, woo! So I'm like, and then once because it kind of snowballs, like once you get all your videos into the it kind of takes a while, and I think back then, I don't know if they're doing it now, but they used to push and advertise for you. Like YouTube would, I don't know if they would spend money or what it was, but they would actually push your videos as ads. And I remember seeing that the one time. I was like, on my own video, and I remember seeing an ad of my video. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. But they would push you that way, and So it kind of took a little bit to get, the earnings kind of snowballed because you had all this older content that wasn't monetized. And then once you're monetized, it takes a little bit. So it did take a while. But then I noticed like once around like late 2012, early 2013 is when I say, okay, this is getting kind of to where I can do this full time. How long I didn't know, so I was just kind of, and I'm still like I'm just playing this day by day, and I'm like, all right, let's see how long this goes and see what happens.
And it was a few years out because how many? So just for context for the audience, how many subscribers did you have when you went full time back then?
It wasn't as many as you'd think. I think it was under 100,000. Yeah, I want to say like maybe 80 or
That's crazy.
70,000. Yeah, and it wasn't, it was different because like a lot of people think like, oh well, how many, because I get that question all the time, like how many subscribers do does is subscribers what matters? Yes and no. What really ultimately earnings break down into just how many ad views you get. So subscribers obviously help because they're reoccurring people that come back and see your new videos, but obviously you want your videos pushed out to new people too because that shows that it has interest and stuff like that, then you get more, you'll earn more from that video. So, but yes, you don't necessarily have to have a lot of subscribers well, I don't know about now. See, like I said, things have changed so much, that like, I don't know. I don't know what you could really do full time from a subscriber number, these days.
I think it really comes down to like all the other ways you're monetizing as well, right? Like if you're just focused on ad, like if you're just AdSense, you're gonna be grinding for a while before you take full time. Like I talked to this dude who had 42K, but he had 2,000 patrons, and so he was like, at 42K, he went full time because he had enough patrons. So it's really all dependent on like the ways in which you monetize too. I think.
Right. Or if you do like merch and stuff, some people do merch. My merch game isn't the best, and I'll be honest with that. And I'm trying to, improve it a little bit, but like I just never was one of those people that just had really, could get merch to take off. Um so, but everyone's different. Some people do sponsored deals. Like I've done a very few. And unless you're getting them all the time, there's definitely no way that's sustainable. Some people do get them like, 3, 4, 5 times a month. And yeah, obviously, you don't really need your, a lot as much as ad revenue, but I guess it just depends on the creator and the niche for that.
What are some things you wish you knew? I guess before you became a full time YouTuber.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'd have to say one of the things was like going back to what I said before was just more about the SEO and just more about brand of my channel. Like once it started getting in the arcade direction, I should have uh I should have rebranded from Matt3756 to something else much sooner. I did it very late because I was just like, and a lot of people ask this, and I'll explain because I get still get people to this day, like 4 years later, here we are, however many years. It's like, why did you change your name? I just wanted a name that went along with the content that I do, so that people that don't see my channel can say, "Oh, Arcade Matt, he must do arcade stuff. That's what this is about." And kind of just to get some new people in, so they kind of, and more so from a brand sense too. Branding is very important with anything, even with YouTube and stuff like that. So I just wanted a nice, clean brand name that made sense with what I do. So that's definitely one of the things I wish I would have taken into consideration. Now, you know, you can experiment because like I've went through so many name changes. Like I've had uh Lawman, Matt3756. I've just tried so many different names, and it was just like I just never really thought of like, okay, we just need something simple and you know. So it's you don't necessarily have to think about it right away as you're starting out, but it's a good idea if you're making videos and you see some content saying, hey, some of these videos are kind of picking up, start to maybe think about, okay, what can I maybe call my channel? What can I maybe what kind of niche do I want to get into? Maybe kind of focus that way.
Does that brand expand? Like for you specifically, when you were focusing on brand, was there anything else you did beyond just the name? Was it like using a specific color scheme or unifying the thumbnails or anything like that? Or was it mainly just the name?
It was kind of just the name at first. As far as like, I really wanted to get like this is the longest I've kept my channel avatar with the tickets in the blue background. I think it worked. I think it popped because I would change that all the time too. It's simple enough, and I'm like, that's good. We can stick with that, Um, but as far as like the other things like thumbnails, I really wish I would have been more consistent with them because I've tried some things before where I'd put like little Matt3756 in the corner of the thumbnail just to say, hey, um, this is my video. Some videos, it depends on the niche. I think it's better. Some creators can get away with just having like a screenshot without them. I found though, and I've been very consistent with this for I'd say maybe the past almost year, is having myself in the thumbnail somewhere, my face somewhere, or me doing something. Like if I'm not in the thumbnail, then sometimes it does well. Like older videos have done well. And I think that's when I was still growing. But I think once you start to have an audience, you just have to find something. Now, like I said, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to put your face in every single thumbnail. It depends on your niche. It might not work for what depending on what you do. But I know with me, it was definitely I was like, okay, the one thing that I can do to keep this consistent so people know that it's me is just to simply put myself somewhere in the thumbnail, so I don't have to get like real fancy with making like I know I see some people do like borders around their thumbnails, which I think is creative. I've tried that, doesn't necessarily work. It's been hit or miss for me. And I think sometimes it can be a little distracting. But if you get a good theme going, then if people just look at your thumbnail and say, "Hey, that's you." A great example of this, and I don't know how many people know of him, is Grade A Under A. He's a guy that does like these little stick figure drawings, and he does these hilarious voiceovers. And he actually had me in one of his videos. He's like of like you videos or YouTube channels that anyone could have made, and he actually ended up really enjoying my videos. And I super cool guy, but his videos are a perfect example of he keeps his thumbnails just with the little stick figure drawings. And as soon as you look at it, you don't have to look at the title that, oh, that's grade A under A, because you can tell by his drawings. So I think with thumbnails, I wish I would have kind of learned that a little bit more, or, kind of taught myself that of, okay, we just need to find something that's going to say, hey, these are Matt's thumbnails.
Is there any other YouTubers you look at that are like, man, they're just doing that thing really well?
Ironically, I don't watch many other YouTubers. Like I kind of just go on and I'm just like, it's I do my thing and stuff like that. But grade A, I think is a good example. He's kind of hit or miss though on uploads. Like he won't upload for like a year and then he'll come back and it'll be like, oh, here I am. So, but yeah, I think him, just because of like how just consistent his videos are, and I think that's what keeps people coming back. They're like, "Oh, this is a grade A video." So, I'm sure there's some others too. I can't really think off the top of my head.
No, that's all good. Is part of the reason that you don't watch a lot of other YouTubers, back to what we talked at the beginning with the comparison trap? Because I guess if you're watching
Absolutely,
YouTubers, then yeah.
yeah. But now I will sometimes go on and watch just to maybe get some ideas. I do find sometimes that helps if I have like a creative block. I'll go on and be like, try and watch someone else and be like, okay, what can I do that they're doing and but make it my own? You know what I mean? Or oh, maybe that's actually not a bad idea to maybe try something similar. In my video, I'll kind of tweak what they did a little bit. So I wouldn't say don't do that, but yeah, for me it's the whole it's a struggle that I still struggle with it to this day. So yeah, that's kind of why I go and do my thing.
You don't have to answer this question if you don't want to, but how closely tied is your mood to the performance of your videos?
Oh yeah, I'm trying to separate that more because yeah, it's so close. It's insane, and I know when COVID hit, I'm like, something's gonna happen. I just predicted it. I'm like, something's gonna happen. And I noticed like my views are just going down and down. And I'm like, maybe just people aren't interested anymore. I don't know, but then going back, I get these people that are like, I've watched you forever and I still enjoy your videos. So something that's why I'm saying something. I'm gonna go back to that A word again that nobody likes to talk about is the algorithm. Maybe they weren't, and this was with the whole FTC thing and the kid friendly stuff. Um, I definitely think that had an effect on us, not directly, but indirectly, because I feel like they were suppressing channels that were maybe in the gray area, just to be on the safe side. Because my channel is not targeted towards kids. In fact, my number one demographic, at least according to YouTube analytics, is 18 to 24, and I meet so many people in that age. Now, yeah, I do have a lot of younger kids, But then I have people, older than me that are, interested in videos, like adults and stuff. And so I really have just everybody. So my content is definitely not, targeting just kids, it's everyone. So that was super frustrating when that kind of was happening, because I'm like, okay, well maybe they're suppressing channels in that gray area, and it's like, but they're not really saying, "Hey, you have to mark your videos as made for kids." But we're just a, arcade. Maybe there are certain keywords were getting flagged or something. I don't know. But that was around the whole thing. Then COVID hits, and then I'm talking with the network I was with at the time, and I'm like, what's going on here? And one guy was like, "Well, maybe people aren't searching stuff that they can't go out and do because everything was shut down, all the arcades were shut down." And I'm like, okay, I see that, but on the other hand, if wouldn't they be searching it more if they're at home and they can't, so something was weird there. And I've had several years like that where it would dip, and be like, wow, maybe this is it. And then it would kind of, start trailing back up again. So it's really like my mood. Unfortunately, I tie my mood so close to my views and stuff, and I know you shouldn't do that at all. And it's a struggle that I try to work on every day. It's because otherwise you're gonna go insane. And there's been days where I've just gone into depression, and it's just I'm like I can't do this, and there was a time where I was just like, I think it's been a rough year and a half for everyone in some aspect of their lives, but I was just like, I ended up making a video. I ended up unlisting it now, but it was just like a video of just like expressing how I felt, and just kind of like, I just I want to make the content that I want to make. I'm worried about like what people are saying and this and that, and it's just I came to the realization that I was losing like part of myself, and I'm like, that's not good. If I'm not having fun doing this, and if I feel like I can't be myself like I was, and which is how I grew this channel, then that's not good. I have to change something. So it was a pretty rough time. Um, but slowly but surely, I'm trying to crawl out of it and just stay focused, and not worry about hate and stuff like that, and just make the content I want to make, and hopefully other people will continue to enjoy it, 'cause that's how I started. So trying to kind of go back to that.
For lack of a better word, like how have you found yourself again? Has it just been kind of like putting on those blinders and just focusing on your channel and nothing else really?
Yeah, yeah, it really has. Like I've really, like, even when I go on TikTok, I really don't watch TikTok. Like I'll upload my TikTok, and I'll try to respond to some comments and stuff. But I don't like being on that app. It's as strangely as much as I've grown on there, it's still it's too much comparison that can be done. It's just, I don't like to get distracted. I'm trying to just stay focused on me right now, and me and my viewers, and people that support my channel. That's I'm kind of just focused, and I've kind of just put my foot down and said, this is how it's gonna be, and I don't want to go back to how I was, because it's just, I remember, because I would go back and watch older videos. Like I'd go back and be like, wow, something's definitely different here, And there are times there sometimes you can tell, like I was just kind of having an off day, Hey, we're all human, but I would go back to my older videos, and I'm like, man, I even saw it, and that's, I think, when it clicked. Something's got to change here, and we can't keep doing this. So
What about like because I think your first subscriber that ever recognized you was when you had 500 subs. I think his name was Brennan, if I'm not
yeah,
mistaken.
yeah,
Um, so you've had people like coming up to you for a very long time and recognizing you. So like, is there pressure with that to kind of maintain a certain image and always be on, even when you're out in public? Like, do you find it hard to take breaks? Essentially, is the question I'm asking.
yeah. And I was actually just I told my one friend, Clock here, that does other arcade stuff as well. He posted some on Instagram, and I said I need to learn how to take a full day off. I'm always doing something, and yeah, I it is tough some, yeah, because like, some days I have bad days, but like I will try, and if somebody does know me, I will try and like, because I don't want, I just don't feel like it, that how am I gonna put this? I don't feel like they, hold on, you may have to edit this part. I'm trying to think of how I want to say this. I don't I don't feel like it's right for me to, be kind of, because like if they see me and they may never see me again, this may be a once in a lifetime run and they'd be super excited. I feel like they deserve, for all the support that they've given me, I can at least kind of, and honestly, like when people see me, it kind of lifts my spirits a little bit too. So it's kind of like a two-way thing, So I think it's pretty rewarding, and I think they each person that supports my stuff deserves the best that I can give them.
How cool is that for you? I think like with people recognizing you and coming up to you, like going back to as a kid, correct me if I'm wrong, but being interested in the claw machine and arcade games was a pretty niche interest when you were growing up. And so, like, how cool is it now to fast forward to today where you've built a community of like millions of people that are interested in the same thing you are? Like, is that how, like, looking back at like the 16-year-old Matt, like, how cool would that have been to him? You know what I'm saying?
So when I started making these videos, I never thought I'd have any kind of following whatsoever. It was just an interest that I had, and it's funny because like the claw machine, like you said, it's a very specific thing to have an interest in, and it's like I remember when I was real little, I was like, I'm like, man, I feel like I'm the only person in the world that loves these goofy things, but I love them, and I just think it's so crazy that and it's funny because, like, my parents and everyone was like, "Man, you're wasting so much money on those, and you gotta stop wasting your money on those, and blah, blah, blah," and it's funny because the one thing they thought I was wasting my money on is not what I do. I've been doing full time for almost a decade now, so but, yeah, as far as, like, that whole niche and everything, it's just like I never thought that as many people would be interested in something that I thought was very stupid when I was little. It's really cool to just, and it's cool to get, new generations interested as well, because I remember being that age and just, it's cool. Like it's just, it's cool to share something that I've always loved as a kid, and get other people interested in it as well.
I know growing up, you used to ask your mom, like, what were you good at or what are you supposed to do? And so, what is your advice to the person listening to this that isn't sure what they're supposed to be doing with their life?
So yeah, it's funny because like I wasn't good at sports. I was shy. I still suck at sports. So I'm like, and she kind of just it's funny because she's like, I didn't really know what to say and blah blah. Blah. But she kind of just said was like, you're gonna find it someday what you're meant to be doing and what you're good at, stuff like that. And I stay I guess my best advice that I could tell people is just don't rush it, like, don't force it. So many people try and force, like, "Oh, I gotta figure out what I wanna do by this age and blah, blah, blah." So it's like, don't force it. Like, just, try different things. If you don't like it, try something else, and it's kinda like, I picked up, like, even photography and stuff like that. I've always loved that, and I found I'm like, "I'm actually pretty decent at this," So it's yeah, and some other creative things as well like that, but, it took time. It didn't I wasn't into that as a kid. Um, just, you just gotta kinda, just play it take it day by day and don't force anything, That's probably my best advice. So many people like, I gotta figure out what am I gonna it sometimes it took me till mid-20s to find out, like, come on, sometimes it takes longer, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's a quote that I think the founder of KFC, I don't know if he said it or whatever, it was just because I think it's something along the lines of just because it took you longer than someone else doesn't mean you failed, and I'm like, "That's a really good quote," because it took I don't know when he started the whole time, but I'm assuming he was older when he started it, and it's look how successful it is. It's never too late.
And I feel like there's a lot of pressure. You know what I mean? Like you gotta, especially now with young people getting younger and younger and blowing up on TikTok. I think you're supposed to have it all figured out by a certain age. And it's just like I don't know if you ever have it figured out completely either. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah,
don't think you're
no,
definitely
I
like,
don't think you
yes,
ever
this is
do.
it.
It's part of life journey, I think, and you're right. Unfortunately, with like stuff like TikTok, and there's a lot of peer pressure too, because if you have friends, I can't even imagine being like in middle school or high school and having like a friend have an account, even getting like 10,000 or 100,000 followers, and you're like, oh my god, you feel like you gotta keep up with them, and it's probably a lot of like peer pressure because everyone wants to be seen, and they want their content to be appreciated and stuff like that. And
Yeah, I can't. I remember growing up, like when I was in high school, like 2012, 2013, and like girls would have like 4,000 followers on Instagram, and that was a crazy high number at the time. Like I can't even imagine now, like and like being your social validation coming on how many followers you have on a certain platform. And it's just like I can't imagine what that's like. Um, but one other thing I want to make sure I brought up on the podcast is it true, like through your content and some of the stuff you've won through like just playing all these different games, like you've been able to contribute to like the World Food Program, Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh, and the Red Cross?
yeah, so I do like donations, especially around like Christmas time. So now I have some Toys for Tots videos coming out because a lot of these places will have just the thing that you can go and donate right there, which was cool. So I had a couple videos coming out on those. Sometimes I'll do like challenges, or I'll do like an end of the year kind of thing where I'm like, all right, we're gonna gather all these plush that I want and we just donate them. It was tough because I would really like to donate them to my local children's hospital. But I think with COVID now, I don't know that they're really taking them anymore, which is unfortunate because it was more of a personal thing than me like dropping them off and shipping them somewhere. But yeah, one way or another, because like I win all these plushies and it's like I don't I would rather them go to kids and stuff like that. But and same with prizes as well, especially around the Christmas time. I like to do a lot of donation stuff, and I've done even stuff like I remember a couple years ago, Mr. Beast did that. I think it was Team Trees, it was called, and then so I made it kind of interesting. You know, I tied it in with arcade stuff, and this is going back to like keeping your content fresh, but changing up just a little bit. So he's like, it was just a website where you go and you can just donate a money amount. So I'm like, huh. So I figured, so why don't I? So I was like, why don't I go to an arcade and for every ticket that I win, that's how much I'll donate. So I went and did like, I forget how much I spent. Like, I had like a certain dollar amount on my card, and then I went, and then I think we ended up raising like $1,300, $1,400 or something like that, or maybe it was 12. I know it was over 1,000 for that uh, cause. So yeah, that's been cool.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I just saw it somewhere, and I wanted to make sure I brought it up on here so people knew like all the like all the other stuff you're doing. Like people might not always see because might be behind the scenes, but I just want to make
Yeah,
sure that I
yeah, and
that I
I've
highlighted that.
done. I try to do like giveaways and stuff too because like I feel it's super important to give back to the people that have supported you. And I'll probably be thinking of. I usually do like a Christmas giveaway, like a big prize. I've given away like $1,000 to Amazon and gift cards, and sometimes I'll ship like a little one of those little toy coin pushers, those little claw machines, plus like a gift card and stuff like that. So I'll have like a bunch of winners and stuff. So it's been cool. It's just a little way that you can give back to the people that have supported you.
How often do you look back kind of on the whole journey? You've had people that have been supporting you for over 10 years now. And like how often do you look back to those first videos, January 4th, 2006, all the way to now? Like how often do you look back on everything?
I'll say at least a couple times a year. I'll just take one of those moments and be like, I'll go back and I'll look. And honestly, like that, probably just a couple months ago I did this, and like I was telling you before, I kind of looking back, and I was honestly I like teared up. I'm like, wow, this is crazy, and then but part of it was because like, wow, I'm starting to kind of just lose myself here, and I miss, I want to be me. It was getting to a point to where I was feeling like eh, it just wasn't enjoyable anymore, and and that goes back to taking breaks too. If you don't take time for yourself, then you're not doing any of your followers a service. And I learned that the hard way, unfortunately. You really have to take care of yourself. It's not a, I try to be a very humble uh, person, but if you don't take care of yourself first, then you're not gonna any of the content or anything you're doing isn't gonna show. It's not gonna be put out to your 100%.
I have a quote of yours written down here, and I want to know what this quote kind of means to you. It's the unexpected people that usually achieve unexpected goals.
Yeah, so it's like going back to like the whole school thing, like the popular kids, being popular in school, and people, kids are just so focused on like, oh, I'm not popular, oh, I don't have many friends, blah blah blah. And it's like, well, if you look back at kind of like, the people like Steven Spielberg, you know, famous directors, famous actors, you look at their backstory, they were a lot of them were kind of just like nerdy, geeky, kids, and it just and look what they did. They didn't let that stop them.
For my last question, I'd like to flip the script a little bit. So instead of me asking the question, it's you asking the question, but it's not to me. So pretend you have a crystal ball and you can ask this crystal ball any question, you'll get the 100% honest answer. What is one question you want to know the answer to?
I guess my question would be, is this what I'm really supposed to be doing with my life? It's kind of just like we have this. I've kind of just been propelled into this whole thing, and is this what I'm really meant to be doing? I don't know.
That's perfect. I know I'm not supposed to answer this question, but I think you are. I think like just looking like we talked at the beginning, like we were like growing up, it was like movies and cameras and arcade games. And like you put those two things together, man. So I mean, not that my opinion matters, but I
Yeah,
think you
I
have. I think
appreciate
you're
it.
doing what you're meant to do. But I want to give you the floor now before we jump off. Where can the people find you? I want you to plug anything and everything you got right now.
So YouTube, you can just if you just arcade Matt, my URL is youtube.com still slash arcade.com/Matt3756. We still have some of the little OG name in there. But if you just type in arcade Matt on YouTube, I pop up. I also have a second channel that I've kind of grown with shorts, but I hope to do more longer content with. It's called Mystery Matt. That's also linked. If you just type in Mystery Matt, that's the URL as well. TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter is all at arcade_Matt. And if you go to facebook.com/arcade Matt, all one word, that is my Facebook page. And I think that's pretty much the main platforms that I'm on. Um, there's like so many now, especially with all these shorts. It's like I'm just trying to. Yeah, I think that's it. So yeah, that's where you can find me. Official website arcadematt.com. I'll have like some prizes for sale, some information, and just some cool stuff. So it's a work in progress. The website.
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure everything's linked in the show notes down below so people can find them. But I want to thank you. I want to thank you so much for taking time to come on the podcast, man. I
Yeah,
really
this is
appreciate
great.
it.
I appreciate the opportunity. I think this is, like I said, when we started, I feel like I have a story to tell, and if I can help someone, whether it's with YouTube or not, or just life in general, I feel like my story is kind of it's a little different, and I feel I enjoy sharing it because maybe some people can relate.
Well, I appreciate being willing to share it on the podcast. I definitely think there'll be multiple people who've listened to this that have taken some things away for sure.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah, they'll love it, and I'll share it wherever. So
I
I think
appreciate
this will
that,
be
man.
really cool. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And thank you again, like I said, for the time. And thank you to everyone that's listened or watched to this podcast, whether you listen the entire way through or you only listen to bits and pieces. I really appreciate taking time to check this out. Everyone, do me a big favor. Go and subscribe to Matt's channel. Go and follow him on TikTok. Go and follow him everywhere. Like I said, everything will be linked in the show notes down below so you can
Thank you. I
find it.
appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure, man.
And my guys, my goobers, make sure you follow Jacob. You have to send me your stuff too, so I can
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
show
Everyone,
them. They might be interested in that.
if you want to find me on social media, I'm at the Jacob Kelly on every social platform. Feel free to come and say hello. My DMs are always open. As always, today's podcast is powered by TruFan. Thank you once again for listening, everybody. We'll talk soon.